You've reached Monster 911, and I'm Lance Hightower. I've been taking cryptid emergency calls for over 5 years. If you have a cryptid emergency, please call our toll-free number, 866-306-8085. I can help you. What's your emergency? Hello and welcome back, everyone. This is Lance Hightower, and you're listening to Monster 911. So if you've not done so, click that subscribe button right now because you're not going to want to miss any upcoming shows we have on this channel. So we've been bringing you guys over the past week a collection of shows each day that we're placing a theme series to, and they're incredible. Last week was War with the Dogman, and this week, the Kansas Bigfoot. We'll have 4 continuous days of astounding encounter events that make you think twice about the state of Kansas, guys. Trust me on this one. Quickly here, be sure and go to check out our website at www.monster911.com and grab a t-shirt or two while you're there, and you can also share a creature encounter/sighting at the contact portion of the menu bar. Now, for today's show. This guest wanted me to wait until a year would pass until I would share her story of her and her son. She was well aware of these government MIB folks who she did not want in her life. And I honored that promise. And now you're going to hear what she wanted to keep quiet for so long.
I was wanting to call and talk to you guys back then, but I had listened to that and I thought, oh Lord, I just don't need that in my life. I don't need those people in my life or in my children's lives. And so I was really, really hesitant.
I understand. And I can't blame anybody, even if I don't know who they are, I've not spoken to them, or I may not ever get to speak with them. I'm on their side because I understand. We were kind of the same way before we did this show. Our family members, my dad, close friends, they just thought we were a little goofy and out there. And, who needs ridicule and embarrassment and, people talking behind your back when you can hear them whisper about you. And so we just knew what we knew what we heard, we knew what we saw, and no one can take that away from us. And so...
Well, I wasn't embarrassed about what had happened to me or what people thought about me, but I was worried about the government coming in and causing me a problem, or, I just didn't know anything as far as how that would work.
Well, and I wish I could, I know a lot more than the average person, but I myself, after doing numerous interviews and acquiring a lot of knowledge about these government types, I still can't say I have a finger on it, but I can tell you that how they know what they know, when they know it, I'm still, in some cases, I can get fairly close as probably to the truth of how they know things, but there are other circumstances, honestly, I don't have the slightest clue how they know, when they know what they know, and how they heard about it, and when no information has been shared, not even to me. So I have quite a few people that will have had an encounter, whether it be good or bad, and they won't share with anyone but, say, their spouse and or their boss, who is really tight-lipped. So in other words, the chain of their encounter only goes to like 1 to 2 people, and yet somehow, we don't know how, these people are, within a week, they're on the site, and I can't figure it out. And they haven't even talked to anyone of any show to share anything. They usually share after the fact with me, like 6 months to a year later, sometimes 2 years, to tell me, and they leave out the part typically where they don't mean to, but they leave out the part where government vehicles came in, and I'll just kind of I'll just say, did any unusual things follow after that? And they'll go, yeah, Yeah, it did. I had these cars, and people knock, and then they're asking me how does that work? And I said, I don't know how they know. You never know when they're going to show up. I wish if I did, I would just come out and tell you right now, but I don't know. I've gotten really good at probably getting right on the spot of how they do it, but when you have unlimited financial resources and you've had decades to perfect what they do, then they're really good at it. And so neither you or we're just second guessing, and it's kind of just a shot in the dark to figure out how they know all this and who they're going to visit and how they know. And I just tell
Well, I know that, like, when my son, when he had that experience with that dogman, my son didn't go back out there for probably, well, it was summertime, and he took his brother out there with him to the firing range out there, and that place was completely closed off. Nobody was allowed. They completely shut it down.
Well,
and so my son called the sheriff's department and wanted to know what the deal was, that they had closed it down. And the guy that he spoke with told him straight up that there had been people starting fires out there, and that several small trees had been ripped up out of the ground. And so they had closed it up because of vandalism and that sort of thing. And I was really, really shocked when he called me and told me that, because that firing range, which is actually kind of out in the middle of nowhere, has been open, 30, 35 years, never been closed down. And suddenly it was just closed down.
Well, if you don't mind, I know you have a lot to talk about, but since we're on this particular encounter, would you mind, and again, speak freely, I will go back and scrub out names and specific locations so you don't have to worry about what you say to me. I'll make sure everything is cleaned up, but would you mind and go back to your son's encounter, what he said happened that day and what he was trying to do and everything, if you would?
Sure. Well, this is coming, this is coming just from him. He has decided that he did not want to. I just talked to him today. He still does not want to talk to anyone about it. But basically what the information that I could get from him, and I did ask a lot of questions, was that in December of 2017, he had gone out to a firing range that's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. We had been going out there for years or so. So he had bought a brand new gun. He wanted to test it out. It was a 357 that he had, and it had a scope on it.
Now we'll just say this is in Kansas. And
yeah, in central Kansas. We can say that if you want.
Sure. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's fine. Anyway, so he said that he pulled up into the parking lot of the firing range, and it's kind of a dirt road. You go down, and then there's a little parking lot, and then you take the road. There's a little dirt road you follow, and it takes you kind of along a pathway into an open fire range out there. And it has a bunch of trees that are along this dirt road, along the side of it. And there's a little pathway that goes in between the trees, tree line, and then it opens up into the firing range itself. You can go out there and put your whatever you're shooting at, whatever it is, your targets or what have you. And basically, nobody's around to hassle you. Nobody's around to cause you any problems, and you can just practice fire your guns. He said that when he was walking down the road, on the dirt road, toward the firing range, he noticed that there was quite a, like it was extremely quiet. It was very, very quiet. And that was very unusual. Normally there's a little bit of noise out there. We've got a lot of birds and things, and he said it was just deathly quiet. He thought that was strange, but he thought, well, you know, this was in late February. We had a cold snap in 2018. He thought, well, maybe things are just pretty well hibernating still. So anyway, he got further down, and he got closer to the pathway that takes you down into the open range, and he said he started hearing something. And what he said he heard was, it sounded like some growling. And then he said that what he decided to do was he didn't have the gun loaded, so he started loading the gun because he thought, well, that growling, you know, that sent him on alert. He looked around into the treeways, and he said he saw shadow form, but he couldn't tell exactly what it was. It was actually just kind of looked like a shadow, and then it kind of blended into the tree line. So he couldn't really see what it was. And he decided to go ahead and keep walking on into the firing range area. And let's see, I'm looking at what I wrote down.
Sure, we're in no hurry. Just take your time.
He said he got down to the actual open area of the range from the bottom at the end of the pathway. He said that he heard a growl, and he said it was just a bone-chilling growl. He said, I mean, he froze at first. It was that kind of thing. And so he turned to his left, and he saw in a clearing, at first, there was like a brush area, like high brush, and it looked like something was shadowing behind that brush. He could see something back there, but he couldn't quite tell what it was. And he said that it was on all fours, and it was like it was peering out over that brush. And then he said it sat up, and that's when he actually saw it.
When it sat up, do you mean it stood up, or was it?
He said that as it moved along that brush line, it got kind of toward the end of the brush line, and he could see it much clearer. And it sat up, and he said it sat up kind of like a dog sits up on its back legs.
Okay.
And he said that when it did that, he said that it was over 6 foot tall.
Wow. Now, this was midday.
It was around 11 o'clock in the morning.
Wow. So, plenty of daylight, especially in February, because even though it gets a little darker earlier in the winter months, it's starting to lighten up a little bit come February like it is right now. But what color did he say this canine creature was?
Let me get the description of the color here. He said that it was said the fur was a dark gray. He said the snout on it was black and it was long. Said it had ears that were pointy like a German Shepherd's. This one had a tail. It had a tail that was approximately, he saw as it turned to leave, to go away from him. The tail was approximately 4 feet long. It was medium in color as far as medium black. And it was slick long fur on the tail. And the tail was sticking straight out.
Yeah, that sounds very similar to a team member of ours. What he saw when this thing was running, the tail was sticking straight out, and was about the same length. It was a different color, but we're finding out they come in all kinds of different colors and shades, from black to gray to calico. So he was by himself. And how did he say approximately how far this creature was from him when he first saw it, and when it kind of sat up?
Looking here, no, he does not. Fun to think on that clearing where he was at, and I would say he was approximately.
You kind of lose a little. Of course, it's a big animal too. I don't know if he even estimated the weight, but
he said approximately 200 to 300 pounds.
Oh, wow. So it could be anywhere from 65 yards to 100 yards, maybe, with some of the descriptive detail he's given. I'm just guesstimating, of course. I don't want to.
I should have asked that, and I just didn't. I was more interested in the description of what he had seen.
Sure. Well, please go ahead. I'm just. I was just curious on the distance, but go right ahead.
Well, he said that when it sat up, he said the paws were huge on it, and it looked like bear claws. He said it reminded him of bear claws. It had short fingers and long, like bear claws on its claws. The legs and the paws it had like put them up close to his chest, up to the chest as it peered. So it was.
So
you know how?
Yeah, like it was it'd be, so if it was sitting upright but not standing, it would be like a domestic dog begging for a treat.
Yeah. It was kind of like that, begging thing.
Interesting.
And it just sat there and stared at him. Just trying to see what he said about the eyes.
How old is your son again when he saw this?
He would have been 24.
And I'm sure that he grew up, if he's out there shooting a firearm, he's very, very familiar with the domestic wildlife in Kansas, mountain lions, coyotes, dogs, hogs, and livestock. I'm not trying to be silly, but I'm just trying to make a point for the listeners that, sometimes people will say, well, he misidentified. Well, here's the thing. When you have someone that grew up and has grown up in rural settings and country settings, you just know what things sound like. You know what wildlife sounds like during different types of years.
So definitely does. He's My whole family hunts and fishes. We fished that entire area. Those kids grew up. All of my kids grew up in that area.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in that area. I started hunting and fishing with my dad when I was about 4 years old. My kids were the same way. We hunted and fished. Actually, I used to put them on carry them in a backpack and take them out camping and hiking and fishing. And then when they got older, they went hunting with us. Their first, I guess you want to call it, their first kills were rabbits. We shot rabbits when they were younger, and then they've gotten used to the wildlife out there.
Yeah, that's perfect. You said it when I wanted to hear what you said, that you just kind of grew up that way all your life, and you took your kids out when you went out, and so they're extremely familiar with the outdoors. In fact, you could call them outdoorsmen. So I just wanted to reiterate that to the listeners, that it's, when you hear and you see enough of normal around you, whatever that is, in this circumstance, it was an animal or a creature, that abnormal just jumps out at you and you're just like in awe. Like, what is that? What is that?
Well, that's what he did basically, is he kept looking at it going, what is that? He said, he told me that, he was looking in, thinking in his mind, he said, that coyote, is that it's not a fox, it's not a coyote, it's, he's trying to identify what is this thing? What is this? There's no way this is a wolf. We don't have wolves in Kansas. Wolves are not in Kansas, not in this area. And he said nothing like that, nothing that he was used to seeing, accustomed to knowing what they were, was fitting anything. As he was looking at this thing, he said that he pointed his gun at it. Because it was, it terrified him.
Sure.
And he said that he had two feelings or two emotions were shooting through his mind.
Okay.
One was fear, and the other was anger.
Anger.
He said anger. Because he felt like he was in danger, and in his mindset, when he's in danger, that makes, he said that it made him angry, because he knew he was going to have to shoot this. It was either going to be me or him if it came at him. It was in other words, it was either going to be the animal or it was going to be him. And as far as he was concerned, it was not going to be him.
Right. Absolutely. And in circumstances like that, when you're by yourself and you see something that you've never seen before, and the sheer size of something like this is, you just have a massive dump of adrenaline rushing through your system. And it's that fight or flight of our nervous system that kicks in. So when you see something that large and you're a ways from your car, you know real quick that you're not going to outrun it.
Yeah.
So you're stand your ground and just, pardon me, but fight like hell kicks in.
Exactly.
And you just start getting that massive dump of adrenaline, and you're going to use whatever means you have. And if all you have is a Boy Scout pocket knife, then you're going to use it to your ability. So he's a ways from the car that's parked at this parking lot. He's walking down this path to where you shoot. And in the process, he hears this growl. He doesn't know exactly where it's coming from. He's looking around in the woods. And in this clearing area, he sees something kind of set up. And he's looking at it. And it's big enough, or close and big enough, that he can make out some details. Did he describe any other details, or besides the feeling of being extremely fearful and anger, what, we always say, did he get a feeling that there was anything else around, or another one around by chance?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. He said that was actually the reason why he did not fire on it. He said that
Oh, interesting.
later, or after, he said after this thing took off, he heard a loud shriek, like it was high pitched, and it was directly behind him in the trees. It was like a high pitched, almost, he called it a shrieking sound.
Really?
Yep.
So
It was a high pitched shrieking sound as this thing was taking off,
behind him.
and it was directly behind him in the tree line. In the tree.
The other one, it left in front of him. It just kind of, did he say it ran, or did it just kind of get up and walk off?
Well, this is what he said. He said the eye color on this thing were red.
Oh.
He also said that the shoulders were hooked together, kind of like a human being's shoulders, and the front legs looked disjointed. He said the back legs kind of more or less looked like a normal dog's legs, like a normal dog's legs,
Wow.
but the front legs looked disjointed. They looked different, weird. And I asked him to kind of describe it, what he meant by disjointed.
Mm-hmm.
And he said they looked like they were on backwards. They did not look right.
So, in other words, I'm just envisioning what he just said, and I'm recounting many of the interviews of people that have seen these creatures. So, in other words, a dog, how it's a quadruped, right?
Right.
So, if you were able to take a dog's arms and move them back, I bet you if he was to take a look at a kangaroo, that's probably what he would say. A kangaroo has a very interesting body structure. They're very, very muscular up front. And their shoulders, in some cases, looks like a man. They're very muscular. The chest is defined. The arms are defined. And in many cases, some of these people say, Lance, this thing had man shoulders. It wasn't like a dog's. It had man shoulders, like with deltoids and biceps.
Yeah, that's what he said. There was the shoulders were hooked together or looked like a human being's. The shoulders and stuff, they were, how a man, he said, has the neckline, the shoulders, and the definition and so on and so forth in the shoulders. He said that's what this thing looked like in the shoulders.
Wow.
Arms were funny.
The front arms were funny.
Yeah, they were like disjointed looking.
Well, because it was so big and muscular, maybe that's what it didn't look right. Just we don't know a lot about the anatomical features on a skeletal level. I mean, we don't know with its skeletal system exactly how it's jointed. So I'll put that in my noodle here, that he said it was disjointed. I've never heard anyone say that. Now, I've heard many accounts where these things have been heard to pop and snap as they're standing up, from going from all fours up to bipedally on two legs, where it's like they're snapping, like dislocating their joints, and because it's a posture they want to assume, so they stand up and there's some loud joint cavitations. But this one didn't stand up, it just sat up, he said.
Yeah, it just sat up. And then he said that when it growled at him again, and he said it just stood there looking at him, and, he had the gun on him. I mean, he was like, he said, I could have taken that shot. It would have been a fairly easy shot. He said, but I just had a really bad feeling if I did, I wouldn't get out of there. And he said that eventually it growled at him again, and then it took off toward another tree line on the left-hand side of him. And he said when it ran, it skip leaped.
So it like hopped, but its hop is like not like a deer or gazelle. I mean, it hops 20 and 30 feet at a time is what we...
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it zigzags when it runs. It's kind of hard to explain, but instead of where... I'll just start with a human. Instead of a human running in a straight line, the right arm and left leg are forward, and that's how our balance motion is when we're running. Or a dog, when a dog runs, it runs in a straight line. Most domesticated animals run in a straight line, whatever they're running away from or to something. These creatures that we understand, whether they're running to something or away from something, they hardly run in a straight line. It's a hopping, and when they hop, they're clearing anywhere, depending on if they're in fifth gear or third gear, they're clearing 30, 40, 50 feet at a time, and it's a zigzag motion. It's not straight. It's a bizarre running
yeah, he
gait.
said it looked like it was skipping and leaping.
Yes. And
What I have here, skipping and leaping.
That's exactly what people describe, the same terminology. Very interesting. Very interesting. Because wolves don't do that. Domesticated dogs don't do that. Feral dogs don't do that. I don't know of a breed of dog, whether it be toy poodle or Saint Bernard or German Shepherd, that does that.
Yeah. When he was trying to describe that to me, he had a really hard time trying to figure out, how to explain that to me. And
well, because it's not anything he's ever seen. What does that? What canine does that? I mean, it's somewhere. It runs like a gazelle, but it's big, and it's not supposed to move that fast, being that big, how big it is. And so it's just a very freak of bizarreness that he's looking at, and so to put it all together and describe it is very difficult. I have found that many people that see these run are just stuttering a lot and in awe. They don't know really how to describe it or put it into words what they saw, how it ran, how big it was, and I don't blame them. It's hard to assimilate all of that physical features and characteristics of what they saw.
yeah, it is. He's a really, really smart kid. He loves guns. He loves hunting. He's, going to college. He's just, he's an avid outdoorsman, but, when it comes to actually sitting down and trying to describe something like that, those kind of things, that's probably the first time that I've ever seen him actually just stutter trying to figure out how to explain this to me.
It happens to everyone, of every intellect, of every occupation. I've had people that have seen these that are doctors, lab technicians, attorneys, commercial bus drivers, nurses, loggers, you name it. And every one of these folks are the same way as your boy. And it has nothing to do with whether a person is a strong man or a strong woman or anything. It's bewildering to the mind. It's hard because we've never seen anything like this. It's not supposed to exist, only in the movies.
That's what he was saying to me today when we were talking about it. I guess, like I said, this happened in late February of 2018, and he and I talk quite a bit. He's, 250 miles away from me. And because I moved I moved clear up where I'm at now. And he moved off to college to where he normally is. And it wasn't far from where we grew up. It's in the same area, but it's just he moved to the town that was closer to where his college was. And he was telling me, you know, that he said that when it happened, once he had a choice after this thing left, he knew there was another one behind him. He knew it was. And he was on a swivel. He said his head was on a swivel. He said he kept looking all around him, watching everything as he got all the way back to the truck. And he got in the truck and pulled out, went home. He said he just sat there. He was just in shock. He says, I don't even remember how I got home. He said, I must have been just in shock. And I talk every day. And I do remember I hadn't heard from him for a couple of weeks. And I was kind of going, okay, what's going on here? You know, maybe he's just busy with school. I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden I got a text and he said, Mom, we need to talk. And I knew something was up. That's not how he texted me. That's not how he was dead serious. Mom, we need to talk.
Well, when you're around someone, especially that that's your son or your daughter, your kids, and even your spouse or close family, I mean, you know their personality, you know their demeanor, you know mm-hmm. You know what's normal in their behavior, and that's the thing that some of the people that have bottled these. The great thing is that he's able to talk to you, and just being able to openly talk with you, and trusting you, and having that relationship with you, that helped him greatly. And many of these people that we get, you know, it kind of comes in waves. They will say, Lance, I haven't told anybody, and it's just eating me up. I got to tell somebody because now it's affected my relationship. It's affected my work. I can't sleep. I'm having nightmares. I'm fatigued. I can't make good decisions. I mean, it just exponentiates into other aspects of their life. And I said, yeah, I mean, because this can turn into a mild, moderate, or in some cases, depending on the type of encounter and, of course, how we're raised, it can lead into a lot of forms of PTSD. And we always say that, you know, people coming back from overseas, the war has PTSD, but we forget that people here at home having severe traumas, emotional traumas, and that's what we're saying fear is. It's an emotional trauma, can have a huge detriment to the emotional well-being of someone, and they can suffer PTSD. It helps immediately after something happens, though, the sooner they can actually talk to somebody. And just talking, you don't even have to give an explanation, just communicating what happened is huge with these people. So that's wonderful that you have that relationship that he could share with you, because that helped him so much. If he's not said it, I'm sure it did.
Yeah, well, I was a single mom with 4 kids, and I worked 2 jobs to support them. And we had an open communication in our house at all times. I had seen what the rest of the world had to offer as far as drugs and alcohol and all of those other things, and all the peer pressure and all of the other things that go on. And I was determined when I had children that I was going to be there for them every step of the way and keep the communication lines open at all times. And I have that open communication with my children to this day. And I started it when they were just tiny little babies. And it's just stayed that way. An honest to God trust.
That's right.
It's
And
open communication all the way.
that is awesome. I like to hear that, because that is what our young people need so much nowadays. Just someone that is always there, dependable, thick and thin, that love them no matter what. And you may not have all the answers, but it's amazing how emotional stability like that, knowing someone's got your back, they're on your side immediately. Unconditional love is what I'm talking about, of course. And so that's what parenting
Sometimes there's tough love, but yeah.
It is. It is.
Yeah, sometimes there is, but by golly, I do. I have a really, really good relationship with my kids.
That's perfect.
And
well,
I'm blessed on that.
You know, in an instant like this, no one can ever plan for something as strange and odd and terrifying as this, but having that open communication helps. It's beyond huge. I mean, it's immense. And I'm saying that because I've talked to many an adult, men and women, that have had these encounters, and by them bottling it up, I don't care what age they are, if they don't have anyone that they feel comfortable enough to share an odd, bizarre event like something like this, it eats at their soul. It just eats at them, and it changes their well-being, their health, their personality. And it sounds bizarre to go to that length, but it does. So I'm so glad he shared that with you. And so after he saw the one he was looking at, walked off or ran off, I guess. I'm not sure what it did. He heard something.
He says that it took off on all fours, running really fast to another tree line. There was a gap between the two tree lines, and that's pretty much where it ran off into.
And then that's when he heard something behind him?
Yes. As he was watching that thing, I mean, he still had his gun pointed at that thing because he didn't trust it, especially as fast as it moved. He was like, well, as fast as that's moving, it could turn.
Did he say if he had, of course, he had a scope on this rifle, did he look at it through the scope?
He looked at the one that was in the tree line, or the one that was behind him?
Yeah, the one that was in the tree line in front of him, that he was looking at the details of this canine creature. Did he said he threw the gun up, and I thought you said it had a scope on it.
Right, it had a scope on it.
Did he look through the scope at this creature to get?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
So he was able to get some detail in that regard.
Yeah, he was able to get the detail on it.
Okay.
We knew he had a clear headshot.
Okay. So that was how. Earlier I was just totally guessing on how far he was away, but if he had a scope on it, not knowing what power it was, let's just say it was 10 power, you can still get some detail. So that's interesting. So we don't know really how far he was away, only that when he threw the gun up there, he was able to look through the scope and probably get more detail of some interesting physical features of this canine creature. And then when he heard that behind him, he didn't stay to continue to practice. He left out of there, you say?
Yeah, he did.
Okay. Do you know, did he back out, or did he just kind of run, or just walk out? Did he say?
Yeah, he did. What he did was he walked out very slowly. He walked out. And he said that, because one of the things that I taught the kids was that whenever you're in danger and it's an animal of any kind, do not run. When you run, they can perceive that as kill. I mean, they can literally, it's one of those things where, it's like running is like a weakness to them, to animals that are, what do you call them? Predator animals, predators. Mm-hmm. So prey, it's like a catch-tail. But if they're moving slowly and they're They're walking calmly. They're less like, a lot of animals will not attack right out at that point.
You're right. And I just had this conversation today. Predators operate on movement. That's their instinct, is movement. And
yeah, I always have a hard time explaining that to people, but you have to fight your fight or flight and use your head. You have to use your head when you're in a situation where your life is in danger. You have to use your head. What you know. Yep. Don't run.
That's right.
Don't run.
So sometimes it's not bad to get a little mad. If you can convert yourself to getting mad, it doesn't mean that you lost your head. What you don't want to do is completely go into a fear state where you either A, do nothing and freeze when you have the means to protect yourself, or B, run out of there like a crazy person and throw your gun down or whatever. I mean, you want to stand your ground, use your head, take a deep breath, just quickly assess the situation, and like you said, back out of there unless you're in a situation where you're backed into a corner and you have no options.
Right.
Then you're going to have to make do with what you got, whatever that is, the best you can.
Right. And that's pretty much what he did. He said he turned around, he walked straight back up that path, keeping an eye on all things, as far as both sides of the tree line, walked the road, keeping an eye again on everything around him, listening for any kind of movement, and then he got in his truck and he got out of there.
He took a couple of weeks to share with you. What did you think when you initially heard this?
Oh, I believed him 100%. He had no idea what those were. He said, Mom, he said, when the first thing he said to me is, I saw something a couple weeks ago when I went down to our target practicing area. And I said, okay, what did you see? And he said, well, I saw something that I don't know really what it was. And I said, okay, well, describe it to me. Tell me what it looked like. And he started describing it to me. And the first time that he described it to me, I had not written anything out. I wasn't interested in writing it out. I wanted to hear what he had to say. And when he got done, he said, have you ever heard of anything like that? And I said, you know what, son? I said, I have been listening to, actually, I'd been listening to you guys. And I said, they talked about something called the dog man. He said, what? I said, yeah, it's called a dog man. It looks like a dog in the face and a man in the body. And I said, it kind of sounds like maybe what you saw, but I've never heard of one in Kansas. I've never even heard anybody report anything about that.
Well, the hard part is that we don't get too many calls from Kansas, just being honest here. But here's my theory. I think these things are in every state except Hawaii. I think they're in Canada and also down in New Mexico. I think that there has been sightings in every state. I think there are some states that have a little bit more in population of these creatures than others, just because of the habitat and the woods. But your initial thinking would say, okay, we're Kansas. We're like, we're kind of like the rolling hills of Nebraska. We're flat land, farmland. there's a lot of, I mean, I've been to Kansas. You guys are just north of me. I've been to Kansas a million times, and there's parts of Kansas that are just exactly like Oklahoma, with thick woods and creeks and river bottoms and lakes and swamp areas.
Well, and this area where this particular firing range area is, that's exactly what it is. It's got lakes and rivers close by. There's not a lot of houses around. There's not a lot of people around.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
It's pretty far out there.
Now, this is not too far from the house. I mean, it's a ways, but it's not like it's. I mean, this is not where he's going to school right now. It's closer to your home.
It's actually let's see where he's at. Let's see. It's about 50 miles from where he's at, where he lives.
Okay. But you're very familiar with that area as well.
Yeah, that whole area that we grew. I mean, the kids and I grew up in that area. We actually hunted and fished in about 4 or 5 different counties around that area. He actually grew up. Where he lives now, he didn't actually grow up there. It's just the next county over. So it's about 35 miles from where he actually grew up.
Okay.
And where this firing range is in that county, that whole county, the kids and I have fished and hunted. When I got married, that's the county we got married in. Their dad and I got married in, and that's where literally that whole area we hunted and fished together before the kids were born, and then when the kids were born, that's what we did. We took them out there. When he passed away, I just continued on with things.
I'm sorry to hear that, but
that's all right.
You have a very strong will. I can hear it, and you just did what you had to do, and it sounds like you did a fantastic job. So that's amazing, really amazing to raise kids like that and kind of be both parents. I commend you for that. So he shared with you. Did he, before he shared with you, or even after, share with anyone else? Did he call the law, or you kind of led into a little bit, but tell me who that you're aware of, who he's shared with, and then how.
He didn't share with anyone but me.
Okay, and so he went back. You kind of started it in the very beginning. He went back to this firing range. And I'm not sure what the time frame was, when he went back. If you know, please just continue.
He went. I think it was summertime, and I told him. Well, I tried to talk to him into not ever going back there, but I don't know. I must have installed some stubbornness in my boys, because they're pretty determined that they're not going to let anything spoil their enjoyment. And all the other fire ranges in that area, they cost money and that sort of stuff, and they're ridiculously priced, and this one doesn't. So he grabbed his older brother, and he told him, he said, I saw something out there. I still don't know exactly what it was. I'm not real comfortable going by myself. Would you mind coming with me? So they went out there, and the place was closed down. You couldn't get out there. It was completely blocked off. So he went ahead and he called the sheriff's department and asked them why the firing range was closed. and the sheriff's department, someone up there told him that they had had a series of fires and that someone had been ripping the smaller trees out of the ground and, vandalizing there. And so they decided that they were not going to open it anymore. And that just made no sense to me.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I can see if you get some what we call yahoos over there, setting indiscriminate fires. We have that here in Tulsa a lot here, and even out in the country, just west of us and east of us and north and south. But ripping trees out of the ground,
yeah,
that's a bizarre statement to say.
Small trees out of the ground, and the fire thing, okay, I could see where people were trying to set up campfires. Around here we have people that like to go out and do big bonfires and that sort of stuff. But ripping trees out of the ground, that's not something that's normally done.
Well, it was either, a couple things here. I always tell people, if something doesn't sound right, look right, or smell right, it's probably not right. And I have found, and no disrespect, I have the utmost respect for people in law enforcement and firemen, paramedics, and highway patrol, and especially our military men and women. But when it comes to law enforcement, sheriff's department, police departments, in trying to not come out and say what they want to come out and say, they use the most interesting dialogue that doesn't even sound right. There's no plan, and so they just kind of sometimes make things up. Now, in this particular so you just know something's not right. But in this particular circumstance, either he is oblivious, and that's what his reasoning is. Someone starting fires and pulling trees up. Something like you said, someone may have started a fire. But on one hand, it may be just covering the truth. And someone else may have reported seeing this, or a creature, or something scary and strange, and they ended up calling the law. And so they just close that off. And that happens in more than a few instances, where they will go into a state park that's not visited a lot. Someone will camp and say they saw something big standing up that looked like a dog. Well, 2 days, they'll close the whole site off and they'll gate it. That's happened, not just in a state park, a small park outside of a small rural area.
About 15, 20 miles in the direction that dogman ran, there is a major and up there. And it's about 15, 20 miles from where he was at. And I had to wonder, that area is pretty isolated. There's areas up there that, not a lot of people go there. Not in that area. And in February, there would have been no one there. Absolutely not a soul.
Well, that's your prime areas. Not that these creatures haven't been seen. And we did a story not too long ago of a gentleman that he was having some issues, and he lived in a very right next to the borderline or tree line area in just outside of a major metro area in Texas. And he was having some strange things happen. He was right up against this little community, was against a wood line, and things were happening, and in the most unique and never thought of areas. And so, most of the time we say in isolated remote areas where there's very little people traffic, you've got water, you've got natural habitat and animals and small prey, you got squirrels, raccoons, deer, turkey, and when you have all those, the big prey follows. And
there's deer all over in that area. a lot of deer. You have to be very, very careful when you're going down the road. You're more than more than I can count. People have hit deer in that area. It's just loaded with them, and I don't know if it'll give it away, but it's also right next to, right across the road.
It's interesting you say that.
Yeah, like you said, he hasn't gone back since, other than that time. So he has not gone back since that June. He's pretty disappointed. That's been our spot forever and a day. And, there's nothing more he can do about it at this point. He's very curious as to why, and he keeps talking about maybe going back this year and seeing if it's still closed off. There's a part of him that wants to see that thing again. Only with a bigger gun.
Well, yeah, I mean, here's the thing. When you listen to enough of these interviews and just what people describe, you wonder, these things are very, very smart. They're smart, too smart for their own good, and we know that they understand or at least recognize that guns, they may not know it's called a gun, but they know that it could hurt them, and so they tend to stay away from the barrel of these things when it's being pointed at them, or knives, and they tend to shy away or deviate away for sure. We've had this happen numerous times, but I wonder, they get smart, and I always tell people, when you see one, just plan on there's two, because that's what you have to worry about. There's been a few instances where these things have created a diversion, and they will have two come in on you, and then that's the problem they start having. You start having is that it's terrifying to know that they could create it takes some intellect.
Well, that's kind of what I wondered. I mean, I did not say anything to him, but I kind of wondered if the one coming out there in front and open like that with one behind him, it takes my breath away to think that how close to losing him I came.
Yeah, that's very terrifying. That's why we go out as a team. We don't go out individually. I mean, that's a rule of ours. We don't go out by ourselves. We never go out by ourselves. Yeah, that's too close for comfort. We don't mess around when we go out. We actually do try to call these things in. There's a special call that we use, and it was designed by one of our team members who's a professional coyote caller, and I don't recommend it. We go as a group, and we've got certain rules we follow, and we have backup plans, but we don't just indiscriminately go out. Again, I don't recommend it. It's kind of dangerous when you see one of these things, how big they are. And so I just tell people this is not something to be taken lightly. It's not like you're searching for a coyote. You're searching for something that'll outweigh a coyote, sometimes anywhere from 4 to 8 times larger. And that's not a very settling feeling to have. And so we take it seriously.